My boss took credit for my app idea, until the investor asked for the creator. The glow of my monitor was the only light in my apartment at 2:17 a.m. Outside, Chicago slept, but inside, my fingers danced across the keyboard, bringing lines of code to life. This wasn't work for Zentech Solutions, this was mine. Something pure. Something that mattered. Run diagnostic, I whispered, watching as PulseMind's interface flickered to life. The AI avatar, a subtle pulse of blue light, materialized on screen. Good evening, Daniel. Your cortisol levels appear elevated. Would you like to try a 3-minute breathing exercise? I smiled. 6 months of late nights were paying off. PulseMind wasn't just responding to prompts, it was reading micro-expressions through the webcam, analyzing voice patterns, and adapting its responses in real time. My name is Daniel Chase. By day, I'm just another code monkey at Zentech, patching back-end systems and attending pointless meetings. But by night, I'd build something that could change lives, an AI companion that learns emotional patterns and provides real-time mental wellness support. I reached for my coffee, now cold, and took a sip anyway. The apartment walls were plastered with sticky notes, algorithm flowcharts, UI sketches, user journey maps. My kitchen table hadn't seen an actual meal in weeks. It was now command central for PulseMind's development. My phone buzzed with a text from Mia, my sister. You still up working on your secret project? Mom's worried you're turning into a hermit. I typed back. Tell her I'm fine. This thing could actually help people like Dad. Our father had struggled with depression for years after losing his job. By the time he sought help, it was almost too late. That's what drove me, the idea that PulseMind could be there for someone at 3 a.m. when the world feels empty, when professional help seems unreachable. I closed my laptop, finally ready for sleep, but my mind was still racing. Tomorrow, I'd have to decide whether to seek outside funding or keep bootstrapping. Zentech's resources would be invaluable, but the company had a reputation for absorbing employee innovations. The next morning, bleary-eyed but buzzing with ideas, I navigated the sterile corridors of Zentech's downtown office. The place was a temple to corporate blandness, beige walls, motivational posters, and the persistent hum of fluorescent lights. Chase! My office, now. Carter Langston's voice boomed across the open floor plan. I winced. Carter, my direct supervisor, was the embodiment of failing upward. He had a talent for taking credit for others' work while shirking responsibility for his own failures. At 45, he'd perfected the art of corporate survival, slick presentations, strategic networking, and ruthless self-preservation. You look like hell, he remarked as I entered his glass-walled office. Late night, I replied, keeping it vague. Carter leaned back in his ergonomic chair. The Johnson account server crashed again. Fix it by end of day. Already on it, I said, turning to leave. Wait, what's this I hear about you working on something outside of Zentech? My heart skipped. Who told you that? Carter shrugged. Small company, big ears. You know our contract has an innovation clause, right? Anything you develop could be considered company property. This was exactly what I feared. Actually, I've reviewed my contract. As long as I don't use company resources or work on company time, my personal projects remain mine. Carter's smile didn't reach his eyes. Playing lawyer now? Just be careful. Zentech isn't known for being generous with intellectual property disputes. That conversation solidified my decision. That evening, I met with Priya Sharma, an intellectual property attorney I'd gone to college with. You need documentation, she advised, sliding an NDA across the coffee shop table. And you need signatures, especially from anyone at Zentech who knows about your project. Carter's the only one who suspects anything, I admitted. Then get him to sign this, she insisted. It establishes clear boundaries. The next day, I caught Carter between meetings. What's this? He asked, glancing at the NDA without really reading it. Just a formality, I explained. For a side project I'm working on. Nothing that conflicts with Zentech, but I want to be transparent. Carter laughed. Playing by the rules, Chase? That's adorable. He scrawled his signature carelessly and handed it back. Happy now? Very, I replied, tucking the document carefully into my messenger bag. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life, fixing Zenteka's problems by day, building PulseMind by night. I filed for copyright protection on the code and design elements. I kept meticulous records of development, timestamps, version controls, even video logs of my work sessions. I never imagined how crucial those precautions would become. The first hint of trouble came when Jessica from marketing stopped by my cubicle. So you're the genius behind Project Empathy, she whispered conspiratorially. I frowned. Project what? Oh, she backpedaled, looking confused. Carter's been talking about this revolutionary mental health app Zentech is developing. I just assumed, since you always work on the cutting-edge stuff. My blood ran cold. What exactly did Carter say about this project? I asked, keeping my voice steady. That it's going to save the company, Jessica replied. Apparently, we've got a meeting with VentureCore Capital next week. Carter says it could bring in millions. As Jessica walked away, I pulled up the company calendar. There it was. Project Empathy Pitch, VentureCore Capital. Carter's name was listed as presenter. Mine was nowhere to be found. I opened my drawer and touched the signed NDA, a strange calm settling over me. Carter had no idea what he just stepped into, or who he was dealing with. I stood frozen in the hallway outside the main conference room, watching through the narrow window strip as Carter gestured enthusiastically at a presentation displayed on the wall-mounted screen. My PulseMind interface, the one I'd spent countless nights perfecting, was projected larger than life, its soothing blue pulse animation playing on loop. The conference room table was filled with unfamiliar faces in expensive suits, scribbling notes, and nodding along. VentureCore Capital had sent their heavyweights. This wasn't just a casual meeting, they were seriously interested. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from Raj, our IT specialist and one of my few allies at Zentech. Dude, did you see the memo? Whole dev teams supposed to steer clear of the West Wing until 4 p.m. Carter's orders. Of course. Keep the actual creator away from the investors. Classic Carter. I retreated to my cubicle, feeling hollow. Zentech had been in financial trouble for months. Our main product line was outdated, and we'd lost 3 major clients in the last quarter. The company needed a miracle, and Carter had decided my app would be it. Lauren from HR stopped by, her expression sympathetic. Hey, Daniel. Carter mentioned you might be feeling overwhelmed lately? Overwhelmed? I echoed. She lowered her voice. He's concerned about potential burnout. Said you might need some time off. The pieces clicked into place. If I was suffering from burnout, I couldn't possibly be the mastermind behind the revolutionary new product Carter was pitching. He was laying groundwork to justify my absence from all investor meetings. I'm fine, I said firmly. Actually, I've never been more focused. The next morning, Carter swaggered into the office like a conquering hero. The pitch had gone well. VentureCore wanted a second meeting. I watched as he accepted congratulations from our colleagues, basking in unearned glory. Every fiber in my body wanted to stand up and expose him right there. But that would be playing checkers. This situation required chess. During lunch, I slipped out to meet Priya at her law office. They can't just take your idea, she assured me, reviewing the signed NDA. Carter personally acknowledged your ownership. But Zentech is desperate, I explained. They're burning cash and PulseMind looks like their salvation. Carter probably figured I'd be too intimidated to fight back. Priya tapped her pen against the desk. We need to be strategic. If we confront them directly, they'll bury us in litigation. Deep pockets, corporate attorneys, they could drag this out for years. So what's our play? I asked. A smile spread across her face. We let them dig the hole deeper. Every meeting, every pitch, every promise Carter makes about a product he doesn't understand, it's all evidence. Back at Zentech, I deliberately kept my head down. I noticed Melissa, the executive assistant, eyeing me suspiciously as I worked late. I made sure she saw me doing nothing but routine Zentech coding. Meanwhile, I used my personal laptop during bathroom breaks to check on PulseMind's secure development environment. 2 days later, our CEO, Maxwell Richardson, called an all-hands meeting. "I'm pleased to announce Zentech is pivoting toward the mental wellness technology sector," he announced proudly. "Our innovative new product, Project Empathy, has attracted significant interest from VentureCore Capital. Carter Langston will be heading this new division." Carter stepped forward, soaking in the applause. Our eyes met briefly across the room. I didn't look away. Neither did he. "Empathy's creator is taking some well-deserved rest," Carter continued smoothly. "But I'll be personally overseeing all aspects of development moving forward." That night, I could barely sleep. Not from distress, but from planning. By morning, I had my next moves mapped out. I reached out to Derek Zhang, a digital forensics expert I'd met at a tech conference last year. "I need to establish incontrovertible proof of authorship," I explained over a secure call. "Something they can't dispute." Derek walked me through embedding specific metadata markers in PulseMind's code, cryptographic timestamps, digital signatures, and hidden attribution tags that would prove origin and timeline of development. "What about the presentation materials Carter's using?" Derek asked. "Each slide has my digital fingerprints all over it," I assured him. "I build everything with attribution watermarks embedded in the files. They're invisible unless you know where to look." Meanwhile, I registered a small consulting LLC called Pulse Innovations through my cousin's address in Milwaukee. It would serve as my professional front, separate from both me personally and from Zentech. My opportunity came faster than expected. Raj texted me during a code review meeting. "VentureCore asking for technical consultation on Project Empathy. Carter freaking out because he can't answer their questions." I made my move that afternoon, sending an email to VentureCore's general address from my new company account. I positioned Pulse Innovations as specialists in AI and mental wellness technology, offering consulting services for their potential investment. The response came within hours. Ari Goldstein, VentureCore's lead investor, wanted a preliminary discussion. That evening, as I was leaving the office, Carter cornered me by the elevators. "I know what you're doing," he hissed, his usual polish cracking. "What am I doing, Carter?" I asked innocently. "Playing the victim. Telling people around the office you worked on Project Empathy." I maintained a neutral expression. "I haven't said a word to anyone." "Keep it that way," he warned. "This company needs this deal. Hundreds of jobs depend on it. Your job included." "I'm just focused on my work," I replied calmly. "Isn't that what you've always wanted?" The elevator arrived, and I stepped in. As the doors closed, I added, "By the way, I've been meaning to ask, how does the adaptive response engine handle emotional pattern recognition?" The look of confusion on his face was priceless. He had no idea what I was talking about, because he hadn't created PulseMind. He hadn't spent months refining its algorithms. He hadn't built it from nothing. But VentureCore would soon discover who had. The following week, I met Ari Goldstein at a coffee shop 3 towns over, far from any Zentech employees who might recognize me. I introduced myself as Daniel Murray, lead consultant for Pulse Innovations. The fake surname felt strange on my tongue, but necessary. Ari was nothing like I'd imagined. No Gordon Gekko suit or slicked back hair. Instead, he wore jeans and a faded Stanford hoodie. But his eyes missed nothing, sharp, evaluative, constantly assessing. "So, Zentech reached out to you about Project Empathy?" he asked after we'd settled in with our drinks. "Not exactly," I replied carefully. "I became aware they were developing something in the mental wellness AI space. It's my specialty, so I reached out to offer my expertise." I kept my explanation vague but factual. No outright lies, just strategic omissions. "Their prototype is impressive," Ari admitted. "The emotional recognition algorithms especially. But their technical team seems disconnected from the core architecture. I nodded thoughtfully. New innovations can sometimes outpace institutional knowledge. We spoke for nearly 2 hours. I explained the technical underpinnings of emotional recognition AI without explicitly claiming to have built PulseMind. Ari took notes, asked incisive questions, and gradually revealed VentureCore's concerns about Centeka's ability to deliver. What would you say are the biggest challenges in scaling a product like this? He asked. Privacy architecture, I answered immediately. Building a system that can learn emotional patterns without compromising user data is a delicate balance. I've found that implementing a localized learning model with anonymized cloud verification offers the best compromise. Ari's eyebrows raised slightly. That's exactly what Centeka's prototype does. Though their team struggled to articulate how it works. I suppressed a smile. Of course they struggled. Carter couldn't explain what he didn't understand. As our meeting concluded, Ari handed me his card. We'd like to bring you in as a technical consultant for our due diligence. Would Pulse Innovations be available next week when we meet with Centeka again? Absolutely, I replied. That evening, I implemented the final touches on my trap. Derek helped me create a complete digital trail, development logs, early wireframes, testing documentation, all cryptographically timestamped and verifiable. We included screenshots of the signed NDA and embedded invisible watermarks in the codebase. Then I made a bold move. I intentionally introduced a sophisticated but non-critical bug in a copy of the PulseMind demo, knowing Carter would use it for the next presentation. The bug would only appear when demonstrating a specific function, one that required deep understanding of the system to navigate around. My phone buzzed with a text from Priya. Got your copyright certificate. It's official. When do we move? I replied. Not yet. Let the trap finish setting. The next day at Centeka was surreal. People kept congratulating Carter, who paraded around the office like a conquering hero. The company's stock had jumped 15% after rumors of the VentureCore deal leaked. Carter had been given a corner office and a team of developers to continue his groundbreaking work. I was conspicuously not on that team. Instead, I was relegated to maintaining legacy systems, essentially being pushed to the margins of the company. It was a calculated move to isolate me, but it also gave me freedom to operate unnoticed. During lunch, Raj pulled me aside in the break room. Dude, Carter's going through all your old project files, he whispered. He had me grant him access to your archive folders. This was actually good news. Every file access was logged on our servers, creating even more evidence of his desperate search for technical details. Let him look, I said calmly. Did VentureCore confirm the next meeting date? Thursday, Raj confirmed. They're bringing in some hotshot consultant. Carter's freaking out, making everyone prep him with technical answers. 2 days later, I received the formal invitation from VentureCore, addressed to Daniel Murray of Pulse Innovations. I also got an unsettling visit from Lauren in HR. Daniel, we're concerned about your performance lately, she began, clearly reciting lines fed to her by Carter. There's talk about putting you on a performance improvement plan. Translation: they were building a case to fire me as soon as the VentureCore deal closed. I nodded understandingly. I appreciate the heads up, Lauren. By the way, would you happen to have a copy of the company's intellectual property policy? Just so I'm clear on everything. Her expression flickered with uncertainty. I'll send it over. That night, I received an unexpected call from Maxwell Richardson, Centeka's CEO. Daniel, I hope I'm not disturbing you, he began formally. I wanted to discuss Project Empathy. My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. What about it, sir? Carter speaks highly of your back-end work, he said, clearly fishing. Says you contributed some key infrastructure elements. So that was their angle. Acknowledge my minor involvement to dilute any later ownership claims. That's very generous of him, I replied neutrally. But I'm afraid I haven't had the privilege of working on Project Empathy at all. A long pause followed. I see, Maxwell finally said. Perhaps we should rectify that. Your expertise could be valuable. I'm always happy to help the company, I said. But at the moment, I'm quite busy with the legacy systems you assigned me to. After hanging up, I immediately called Priya and explained the conversation. They're getting nervous, she confirmed. They know something's off, but they don't know what. The morning of the VentureCore meeting, I dressed with particular care, not in my usual Zentech-appropriate business casual, but in a sharp suit befitting a professional consultant. I packed 2 items in my briefcase, the original signed NDA and a flash drive containing irrefutable proof of my creation of PulseMind. As Daniel Chase, I went to work at Zentech as usual, slogging through mundane database maintenance. But at 2 p.m., I slipped out through a side entrance. At 3 p.m., Daniel Murray of Pulse Innovations would walk into VentureCore's offices for the joint meeting with Zentech. And Carter Langston would finally discover what it means to steal from someone who's always 3 steps ahead. VentureCore's offices occupied the top floor of a sleek downtown skyscraper. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city, a not-so-subtle reminder of the heights to which their successful investments had risen. I arrived 20 minutes early, giving the receptionist my consultant alias. She directed me to a small waiting area where I could see the main conference room through glass walls. Inside, Carter was already setting up, arranging handouts with practiced precision while chatting with Maxwell. Neither had seen me yet. My phone vibrated with a text from Priya. In position. Document server ready. Good luck. We had prepared for every contingency. If things went south, Priya would execute our nuclear option, a mass email to Zentech's board and VentureCore's partners containing all our evidence. At exactly 3 p.m., Ari Goldstein emerged from an elevator with 3 colleagues. He spotted me immediately. Daniel, glad you could make it, he said, extending his hand. Let me introduce you to our technical team. I shook hands with VentureCore's analysts, aware that Carter had finally noticed me through the glass. The blood drained from his face so rapidly I thought he might faint. Shall we? Ari gestured toward the conference room. As we entered, Maxwell Richardson stepped forward, confusion evident in his expression. Mr. Goldstein, I wasn't aware you were bringing additional parties to our discussion. This is Daniel Murray from Pulse Innovations, Ari explained smoothly. The technical consultant I mentioned. Carter stepped forward, his smile strained. Actually, there seems to be some confusion. This is Daniel Chase, one of our junior engineers. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to me. Interesting, Ari said, glancing between us. Care to explain, Daniel? I maintained perfect composure. I do work at Zentech as Daniel Chase. Pulse Innovations is my consulting firm, which I operate independently, on my own time, using my own resources. Carter's laugh was brittle. This is absurd. He's trying to sabotage our deal because he's been passed over for promotion repeatedly. Perhaps we should all sit down, Ari suggested, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp with interest. The next hour was excruciating for Carter and Maxwell. VentureCore's technical team peppered them with increasingly specific questions about PulseMind's architecture. Carter fumbled through rehearsed answers until Ari raised the question I'd been waiting for. Let's discuss the adaptive response engine, Ari said, leaning forward. Specifically, how does it balance real-time emotional analysis with user privacy? Carter hesitated, then launched into a word salad of technical jargon, impressive sounding but fundamentally meaningless. The algorithmic matrix interfaces with cloud-based neural networks while maintaining localized data sovereignty through encrypted channels. Ari nodded thoughtfully, then turned to me. Mr. Murray, your thoughts on this approach? With respect, I replied. That description doesn't actually explain the process. The real innovation in this system is the bifurcated learning model. Emotional recognition happens entirely on-device, while anonymized pattern analysis occurs in the cloud. User data never leaves the device in identifiable form. Ari's team exchanged glances. One of them whispered something to Ari, who nodded. Let's see a demonstration, he suggested. The emotional escalation scenario we discussed last time. Carter confidently opened the PulseMind demo, my demo, with my intentional bug embedded in it. When he reached the critical interaction point, the system froze exactly as I had designed it to. Just a minor glitch, Carter said, his forehead beading with sweat as he frantically clicked through screens. May I? I asked, standing up. After an uncomfortable moment, Carter stepped aside. I approached the laptop and executed a specific sequence of keystrokes, one that only the original programmer would know. There's a failsafe built into the code, I explained as the system recovered. A security feature to prevent unauthorized demonstrations. The implication hung in the air. Carter's face twisted with anger. This is ridiculous, he spat. You're just a back-end engineer. You couldn't possibly. Mr. Langston, Ari interrupted. We'd like to see the original wireframes and development logs. Carter froze. Those are proprietary. Of course, Ari agreed. But as potential investors committing 8 figures, we need to perform proper due diligence. Maxwell jumped in, sensing disaster. We can certainly provide those materials after executing additional NDAs. Wonderful, Ari said. And we'd like to speak with the original creator. The person who first conceived and built this system. The room fell silent again. Carter and Maxwell exchanged panicked glances. As I mentioned previously, Carter said stiffly, our lead developer is on medical leave. Burnout. I see, Ari replied. He turned to his team. Let's take a short break. 20 minutes? As VentureCore's team filed out, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. This is Ari. We need to talk privately. Elevator lobby. I excused myself and found Ari waiting by the panoramic windows. I've been in venture capital for 15 years, he said without preamble. I've developed a nose for bulls **T. Right now, my office smells like a farm. I remained silent, letting him continue. We've done background research on Project Empathy. Found nothing before 3 weeks ago. No patents, no development history. Then suddenly Zentech has a revolutionary product. He fixed me with a penetrating stare. But we did find something interesting about you. A copyright filing for something called PulseMind from 6 months ago. My heart pounded. This was it. I think it's time for full disclosure, Mr. Chase, Ari said. Because I'm not investing in thieves. I nodded and pulled out my phone, sending a text to Priya. Green light. Check your email in 5 minutes, I told Ari. You'll have everything you need. When we returned to the conference room, Carter and Maxwell were huddled in intense conversation. They fell silent as we entered. Gentlemen, Ari announced, I've decided to take a different approach to this meeting. He opened his laptop and turned it toward the room. On the screen was an email from Priya containing the signed NDA, my copyright certificate, and a link to the complete development history of PulseMind. Let's start over, Ari said, his voice hardening. And this time, let's talk about who really created this application. The conference room atmosphere transformed instantly. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees as Ari slid the NDA across the polished table toward Carter. This is your signature, correct? Ari asked, his voice deceptively casual. Carter squinted at the document, then looked up with a forced laugh. This was just a formality. Daniel works for Zentech. Company policy clearly states. I've reviewed Zentech's intellectual property policy, Ari interrupted, pulling out another document. It specifically exempts projects developed without company resources, on personal time. Which, according to these development logs, is exactly what PulseMind is. Maxwell Richardson's face had gone ashen. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding, he began, but his voice lacked conviction. Let me clear things up, I said, speaking with quiet confidence. 6 months ago, I began developing PulseMind as a personal project, inspired by my father's struggle with depression. 3 weeks ago, Carter discovered my work and decided to rebrand it as Project Empathy, a Zentech initiative. That's preposterous, Carter sputtered, but his eyes darted nervously around the room. I opened my laptop and pulled up the development repository. Every line of code is timestamped and signed. Every design element is watermarked. The digital forensics are unambiguous. One of VentureCore's technical analysts leaned forward. We've verified the timestamps independently. They're cryptographically secure. Can't be forged. Carter's strategy shifted visibly. His face hardened as he turned to Maxwell. Even if he started this as a personal project, he refined it while employed by Zentech. That makes it company property. Actually, I countered. I anticipated that argument. I pulled out my personal development logs. I maintain separate environments. Here's my personal laptop activity log showing development hours, all outside of Zentech's working hours. And here's Zentech's server access log showing I never accessed company resources for this project. Ari nodded appreciatively. You were thorough. I had to be, I replied. Maxwell, sensing disaster, attempted damage control. Perhaps we can reach an accommodation. Daniel clearly contributed significantly to this project. We could discuss proper attribution and compensation. Contributed? I echoed incredulously. I didn't contribute to PulseMind. I created it. Every line of code, every algorithm, every interface element. And I have the signed NDA from Carter acknowledging my ownership. Carter slammed his fist on the table. This is sabotage. He's trying to hijack a company-saving opportunity because he's jealous. Ari raised an eyebrow. Mr. Langston, please explain something for me. If you created this technology, why couldn't you answer basic questions about its architecture? Why did you need Mr. Chase to fix your demonstration? Before Carter could respond, the conference room door opened. Priya stepped in, followed by Derek Zhang. I hope we're not interrupting, Priya said smoothly. I'm Priya Sharma, Mr. Chase's attorney. This is Derek Zhang, digital forensics expert. Maxwell stood up, his composure cracking. This is a private meeting. You can't just barge in. Actually, Ari interjected, I invited them. As potential investors, we need complete clarity before proceeding. Derek connected his laptop to the presentation screen. I've prepared a comprehensive timeline of PulseMind's development, contrasted with Zentech's recent activities. The display showed two parallel timelines. Mine stretched back 6 months, with regular commits, design iterations, and testing phases, all meticulously documented. Zentech's timeline started abruptly 3 weeks ago, with Carter's calendar entry. Discuss Chase's side project. The evidence is conclusive, Derek explained professionally. PulseMind was created independently by Daniel Chase. Zentech's Project Empathy is the same product, rebranded without the creator's permission, in direct violation of the signed non-disclosure agreement. Carter's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is a coordinated attack. They're colluding to undermine Zentech. That's enough, Carter, Maxwell said sharply, finally seeing the inevitable outcome. He turned to me with newfound respect. Mr. Chase, perhaps we should discuss this privately. I think we're well past that point, I replied calmly. Ari closed his laptop decisively. Here's where we stand. VentureCore is still very interested in this technology, but we don't partner with companies that steal intellectual property. Our legal team would consider that a significant liability. Carter made one last desperate attempt. He built it while working for us. Our contract gives us rights to anything he creates. That would be a compelling argument, Priya interjected. If the contract actually said that. But it doesn't. I've highlighted the relevant sections for everyone's convenience. She distributed copies of my employment agreement with the intellectual property clauses clearly marked. The room fell silent as everyone read the document. Carter's face crumpled as he realized his defeat was total. Maxwell cleared his throat. Mr. Goldstein, given these complications, perhaps we should reschedule our discussion. That won't be necessary, Ari replied. VentureCore is no longer interested in partnering with Zentech on this project. He turned to me. We are, however, very interested in discussing terms directly with PulseMind's creator. Carter leapt up, knocking over his chair. This is a setup. You can't do this. Mr. Langston, Ari said coldly. Stealing another person's work and passing it off as your own isn't just unethical, it's potentially criminal. Maxwell, seeing the complete collapse of the deal, finally took control. Carter, that's enough. He turned to his assistant. Please escort Mr. Langston to HR. We need to discuss his position with the company. As Carter was led away, still protesting, the tension in the room dissipated. Maxwell turned to me with a calculating expression. Mr. Chase, perhaps Zentech could license your technology? We could offer very favorable terms. I think that ship has sailed, I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. Ari extended his hand to me. Daniel, we'd like to continue this conversation about supporting PulseMind as an independent venture. Are you free tomorrow morning? I shook his hand firmly. I believe I will be. As the meeting broke up, I gathered my materials calmly, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Justice had been served, but not through angry confrontation or impulsive action. Instead, preparation, documentation, and strategic patience had won the day. Carter had assumed I was just another expendable coder, someone he could use and discard. His fatal mistake was underestimating the quiet one in the room. The morning after the VentureCore meeting, I arrived at Zentech for the last time. The office buzzed with whispers as I walked to my desk. News travels fast in tech companies, and the dramatic ousting of Carter Langston had spawned dozens of versions of the story, each more exaggerated than the last. I didn't bother correcting any of them. Instead, I packed my few personal items into a cardboard box, a coffee mug from my sister, a small cactus that had somehow survived years of neglect, and a framed photo of my father, the man whose struggles had inspired PulseMind in the first place. Lauren from HR approached cautiously. Maxwell would like to see you before you go. I nodded, unsurprised. The CEO had been calling and texting since last night, each message more conciliatory than the last. Maxwell's office door was open when I arrived. He stood as I entered, extending his hand with forced cordiality. Daniel, thank you for coming. Please sit down. I remained standing. I'm just here to submit my resignation. That's what I wanted to discuss, Maxwell said, gesturing again to the chair. There's no need for hasty decisions. What happened with Carter was unfortunate, but it doesn't reflect Zentech's values. I almost laughed. It reflected Zentech's desperation. You knew what was happening. Maxwell's professional mask slipped slightly. We're offering you Carter's position. Vice President of Innovation, with double your current salary and stock options. You can lead the development of PulseMind as a Zentech product, with full creative control and proper recognition. I placed my resignation letter on his desk. I met with VentureCore this morning. They're funding PulseMind as an independent startup with me as CEO. The term sheet is already signed. Maxwell's expression hardened. You realize Zentech will fight this. Our attorneys will lose, I finished for him. Spectacularly and expensively. My ownership is documented and legally protected. But feel free to waste shareholder money on doomed litigation. As I turned to leave, Maxwell called after me. This company gave you a chance when no one else would. You owe Zentech your loyalty. I paused at the door. I gave Zentech 5 years of my talent and dedication. I owe it nothing more. Especially not after what happened. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind. VentureCore provided not just funding but mentorship, connecting me with industry veterans who helped navigate the challenges of building a company from scratch. We leased a small office in a converted warehouse, its brick walls and wooden beams a welcome change from Zentech's sterile environment. My first executive decision was hiring Raj as my CTO. He'd quit Zentech the day after I left, disgusted by how they treated me. Together, we built a founding team that shared our vision of technology with genuine empathy at its core. 6 weeks after leaving Zentech, I received a certified letter from a law firm representing Carter Langston personally. He was suing me for defamation, claiming I had maliciously destroyed his reputation with false accusations. Priya laughed when I showed her the letter. He's just digging himself deeper. Discovery will be fascinating. She was right. Carter's lawsuit collapsed before it even reached court. The judge reviewed our evidence during preliminary hearings and dismissed the case with prejudice, calling it a transparent attempt to rewrite history. Meanwhile, PulseMind was evolving rapidly. Beta testing showed remarkable results. Users reported significant improvements in their mental wellness metrics after just 3 weeks of use. The adaptive AI was learning and growing more sophisticated with each interaction. For months after our launch, I received an unexpected visitor at our office. My father, looking healthier than I'd seen him in years, arrived with my sister Mia. "We didn't tell you we were coming," Mia explained, hugging me tightly. "Dad's been using the beta version. He wanted to see where it was made." My father looked around the bustling office with pride. "When you were a kid tinkering with computers in the basement, I never imagined this. But I always knew you'd do something important." I showed them around, introducing them to the team. As we walked, my father gestured to my phone. "That thing you built, it doesn't replace real help, but it's there in those moments when everything feels too heavy to carry alone. It listens without judgment." His words meant more than any venture capital validation or media coverage. This was why I'd created PulseMind, not for profit or recognition, but to be present for people during their darkest moments. 1 year after the confrontation with Carter, PulseMind Incorporated was valued at $140 million. We'd expanded to 30 employees and launched partnerships with major healthcare providers. Zentech, meanwhile, had continued its downward spiral. Maxwell had been ousted by the board, and the company was fighting off bankruptcy rumors. On the anniversary of my resignation, I received an email from Ari Goldstein. "Thought you'd appreciate this. Zentech's board meeting minutes from 3 weeks before our fateful meeting. Maxwell knew Carter was claiming your work and authorized it anyway. Some people create value, others try to steal it. Glad we backed the creator." Attached was a confidential document confirming what I'd suspected all along: the theft had been institutional, not just Carter's individual treachery. I closed the email without responding. That chapter was finished. That evening, as our team celebrated our 1-year milestone, I stepped away from the festivities to walk through our quiet office. On the wall hung our company values, the first of which read, "Credit belongs to those who do the work." My phone buzzed with a notification. PulseMind had just surpassed 1 million users worldwide. I smiled, thinking of all those people finding support through the darkest moments of their lives. This was my legacy, not revenge against Carter or triumph over Zentech, but creating something that mattered. Something that helped. Carter had tried to steal my creation, but in doing so, he'd inadvertently forced me to claim my own path. In his greed, he'd set me free. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best beginnings. And sometimes the quiet ones, the ones working diligently in the shadows, end up changing the world.